Hello everyone. I've been a silent observer here for quite some time, but what I recently endured compelled me to share my story. This isn't just another tale of ghostly encounters, it's something that truly happened to me, and honestly, part of me wishes it hadn't. Let me share the whole chilling experience. Late fall had brought a biting chill to the air when I decided to relocate to a quaint, old cabin on the fringe of Greystone Woods. The place promised a serene escape from the relentless pace of city life, offering solitude for writing and reflection. The cabin, antiquated yet charming, featured creaky floorboards, windows that shuddered with every gust, and an ancient stone fireplace that battled valiantly against the creeping cold of the approaching winter. Initially, the tranquility was soothing. I spent evenings by the crackling fire, lost in books or simply watching the dance of shadows across the room as flames flickered. Outside, the nocturnal symphony of forest life play each night, their calls and cries weaving through the trees provided a comforting backdrop to my solitude. However, as the days shortened and the shadows grew longer, the peaceful ambience gradually began to shift. It started subtly, whispers that drifted on the wind, so faint I could convince myself they were just the sound of leaves rustling or the old cabin settling. These whispers came at dusk, just as the light faded, whispering softly. Livia's days turned into nights. The whispers grew progressively louder and more distinct. "Lee, go." It was unmistakable. Something, or someone, was communicating with me. A sense of dread began to take root, an eerie feeling that I was trespassing in a realm where I did not belong. The once comforting nocturnal sounds of the forest turned sinister, as if the darkness itself was watching, breathing, waiting. Each creak and whisper seemed to carry a warning, a malevolent undertone that prickled the back of my neck. Driven by a mounting sense of unease, I ventured into the woods one evening, seeking answers. The forest felt alive with a malevolent presence. As I walked deeper, the air grew thicker, colder, almost palpable with anticipation. Suddenly, from the corner of my eye, I caught a fleeting glimpse of something, an indistinct shape darting between the trees. It moved too swiftly, too fluidly to be human. My heart raced, and a chill ran down my spine. I paused, peering into the dense thicket, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only the rustling of leaves in its wake. That brief sighting was enough to send me hurrying back to the relative safety of my cabin. One afternoon, seeking some semblance of normalcy, I decided to go fishing at a nearby medium-sized pond, a spot where I had often found solace and success in catching a few local fish. But that day, the pond was disturbingly quiet. The usual hum of life was conspicuously absent. No birds chirped, no frogs croaked, and not a single dragonfly buzzed across the water. The silence was profound, unsettling. As I cast my line, a profound sense of unease washed over me, as if I were not alone. My gaze drifted across the water to the tree line on the opposite bank, and I could feel eyes, intense and unseen, watching me from the shadows. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, as if charged with an ominous energy. A cold breeze whispered across the surface of the pond, carrying with it a foul, unidentifiable stench that made me gag. The feeling of being watched intensified, becoming almost palpable. Overwhelmed by fear, I hastily packed up my fishing gear and hurried back to the safety of my cabin. Later that day, driven by a mix of curiosity and dread, I returned to the pond. To my horror, I found the maimed remains of a fox near the water's edge, its body a grotesque testament to the savagery that had taken place. This chilling discovery should have been a clear warning, yet I chose to stay, a decision I would soon deeply regret. Weeks later, my thoughts still haunted by the macabre sight and unshakable feelings of dread, I resolved to face whatever was lurking in the woods. Each day, my fear battled with a burgeoning sense of resolve. I knew I couldn't live in the shadow of the unknown, tormented by fear. One morning, armed with nothing but a flashlight and a walking stick, I set out to find the clearing again. The path, once familiar and welcoming, now seemed twisted and menacing. Branches reached out like gnarled fingers, and the ground beneath my feet felt unstable, as though I was walking over a grave. The whispers seemed to follow me as I walked, a chorus of voices urging me to turn back. but something inside me needed to see, to understand. I recalled the previous sightings, the chilling encounters, and with each step, my resolve hardened. By the time I reached the clearing, my heart was pounding, not just with fear, but with a defiant need to confront whatever awaited me there. The air felt heavy, charged with a palpable sense of dread. The creature was horrifying, a being so out of place in the natural world that my mind recoiled in horror. Its appearance was grotesque, a nightmarish form that seemed ripped from the depths of a fevered dream. The creature was emaciated, its limbs grotesquely elongated and bent at unnatural angles as if they were broken yet still functional. Its skin was an ashen white, almost translucent, stretched taut over protruding bones. Dark, pulsating veins webbed its body, visible beneath the sickly skin, seeming to throb with a black ichor. Its oversized head was crowned with deep, empty sockets where eyes should have been, and a mouth that appeared too large, hanging agape in a perpetual silent scream. Around it swirled a thin mist, from which the whispers emanated. Now a tormented wailing, leap, go. Each word carried a gust of icy wind that bit into my flesh. Rooted to the spot in terror, I watched as it moved with jerky, tortured motions. Unaware of my presence, it seemed trapped in its own world of endless torment. Then, suddenly, it stopped and turned towards me. As our gazes locked, it extended a grotesquely long, thin arm towards me, the hand malformed and trembling. Your eyes. They look cumbersome, it hissed, its voice a chilling echo in the dense air. Let me take them. The terror that screamed within me to flee was momentarily overshadowed by an overwhelming curiosity. My feet moved of their own accord, drawing me closer to the creature. As I approached, it ceased its tortured movements and seemed to notice me for the first time. The air dropped in temperature, the whispers growing to an unbearable pitch. Why stay, leave now, it groaned. An inexplicable urge to step closer washed over me, but fear won out. I turned and fled, spent a restless night in the cabin, and by dawn knew I had to leave. I packed hastily and drove away, seeking safety in distance. Months passed, and I thought I had escaped the nightmare as I moved across the country, eventually settling down in a small town with a job at a local candle factory. Life returned to normal, or so it seemed until yesterday. As I left work, the sun dipping below the horizon, there it was outside the candle factory, the same ghastly figure, its thin mist swirling around it in the dim light. It hadn't just followed me, it had waited, biding its time. The sight of it there, just beyond the reach of the factory lights, made my blood run cold. The same empty sockets seemed to pierce through the growing darkness, locking onto mine as if it could see into the very depths of my soul. Panic gripped me, a visceral, clawing terror. I stood frozen, my car keys clattering to the ground as the whispers returned, louder and more menacing than ever. Never leave, never go. It hissed, its voice a chilling echo that wrapped around me like the cold mist. Today I saw it again, in the same spot, watching, waiting, its presence a grotesque sentinel at the threshold of my everyday life. Now I'm sharing this with you, not just as a warning, but as a plea for help or understanding. What is this creature? Why is it following me? Does it want something? Or is it simply the herald of some personal doom? So, that's my story. Believe it or not, that's up to you. But one thing is for certain, in some places, some whispers should never be sought out. I've learned that the hardest way possible. What do you all think? Have any of you encountered something similar? I'm desperate for answers and hope someone here can offer insight. Remember, tread carefully in places that feel uninviting, and always listen when the whispers tell you to leave. End of post.